billionaire real estate tycoon who speaks his mind and promises to do everything differently. To those who voted against him, he's a liar and dangerous, a sexist and a racist who will divide, not unite. His administration will face some of the toughest challenges in American history: the economy, climate change, ISIS, and a shifting world order in which America's place is no longer clear. His term and his time starts now. Today, he takes the oath of office. Today, he takes on the biggest job in the world, when he places his hand on the Bible and promises to serve all Americans. Will he mean it, and will his country believe him? More voted against him than for him, millions more. So in this moment, eyes around his country and around the world are set to judge. Will his words further split a fractured nation? Or will he show he just might be the president who can move America forward? From Washington, it's Inauguration Day for the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And you're looking live at one of the most famous structures in the world. That, of course, is Capitol Hill here in Washington. This is where the inauguration will take place. The official moment, just about 2 hours away now. And good morning, I'm Peter Mansbridge. Here in Washington, our view is terrific. We're right on the terrace of the Canadian Embassy overlooking Capitol Hill. On this day, it's been a little bit drizzly, a little bit of rain. It's not warm, but it's not cold either. Cold was the day Barack Obama was inaugurated. It was in the minus figures then, little in the plus mark today. Worried a little bit about rain, but so far any heavy rain has been held off. Let's go right up to Capitol Hill right now, because within feet, within meters of the spot where Donald Trump will take the oath of office is our Paul Hunter. Paul, give us a sense of what it's like up there right now.
Peter, to paraphrase Joe Biden, this is a big deal. And I'm telling you, it is a privilege to be speaking to you from where I stand. As you say, we're just meters from where Donald Trump will take the oath of office. I am literally looking up at the dome. There's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Dignitaries have just started kind of filing in. We're going to see Jimmy Carter, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, and of course the president-elect when he comes through that door, down those steps, by those chairs to take the oath of office, those 35 words, and then give the inaugural address. This country does this stuff right. It's hard not to get caught up in the pomp and ceremony of this. As I look down that way, by the way, Peter, I see Canadian flags hanging off the embassy, and I can almost make you out amid the throngs of people in a mix of rain ponchos and those red Make America Great caps that they've got on as far as I can see. It's going to be quite a day, and this is quite a spot to take it in.
It sure is. Yeah, you got a great spot to watch it all. The police are estimating anywhere in the 800 to 900,000 figure for the crowds here today. We'll see how that plays out over the next couple of hours. There's been a lot of congestion in D.C. today as people try to get here, but the weather has also been a factor. But yes, this is really happening after months, if not a year, of people saying Donald Trump will never be president. He is going to be president in less than 2 hours' time, and you'll get to watch it all unfold right here on CBC. Let me show you what happened just a few moments ago, because it was a further signal of this moment and this historic day. Barack Obama and his wife, Michelle, welcoming the Trumps, Donald and Melania, to the White House. They're inside having coffee with their respective running mates, their vice president and the vice president-elect. Can only imagine what that conversation must be like. Those two men who made no secret of the fact they didn't think very much of each other over these last couple of years. Donald Trump led in some ways the birther movement against Obama, and Obama was vigorous in his attacks on Donald Trump during the campaign. But those moments are over. These two have at least for the cameras, have got along extremely well since Election Day. They've had a number of meetings in person, and they have had many phone calls, they both say, where the conversations have been good, spirited, and constructive. Well, helping us cover this story over these next few hours, we're very lucky to have with us Jennifer Carroll. You may remember Jennifer from watching the presidential campaigns, especially any of the events that took place in Florida, because almost every time you were there to introduce Donald Trump. Former Lieutenant Governor of Florida, obviously a Trump supporter. What is this day meaning to you so far?
This day is historic in a sense that it's showing a peaceful transfer of power, regardless if it's Donald Trump or anyone else. It's a ceremonial aspect. It's not in our Constitution to do, but ever since George Washington, our first president, we have had the ceremony to peacefully transfer the power over, and also to show the pomp and circumstance for the people to get excited about the movement and the moment at the time.
Well, the question is, how peaceful will this be? The transition of power, there's no doubt it's been happening, and it will happen up on that stage, but there has been a tension on the part of the supporters and the distractors of Donald Trump over this last little while. We've seen some of it play out in the last 24 hours. Is that expected, or does that taint what we're watching?
For some people, it will taint it because people will get confused. Why are we seeing the protesters out trying to stop the folks that peacefully want to see this transition of power take place? As we've seen some of the choke points of the marchers, the protesters stopping individuals, trying to stop them from coming in. So for some that don't understand the whole process, they may be confused, but the bottom line is it's going to happen. But Donald Trump is not going to have it easy, nor did George Bush have it easy when he took over, because he was seen as an illegitimate president, and that's been the mantra for months, that Donald Trump is illegitimate. So the bottom line is Donald Trump is going to have to carry the weight to bring the country together. Well,
we'll see how that works, especially in these next few hours. I'll tell you a quick anecdote about this morning on the way over here. Not far from our hotel, but the only way to get here really without having to go through a continuous series of roadblocks and checkpoints was to take the subway. On the subway, in the car I was in, you had both supporters and protesters with their signs, with their gear. Everybody, at least in the car on the subway, was getting along just fine. All right, let's go down into the street, because Adrian Arsenault has been watching some of the protesters and some of the supporters on this day, and Adrian has got a guest for us. Adrian.
You bet, Peter. We're along Pennsylvania Avenue here, by the way. You see lots of Trump supporters wandering with their tickets, clutching their tickets, and walking through these crowds of protesters who actually have a permit to be right alongside the parade route. That is a big deal. Some 20 of them have a permit. I'm with Lorraine Pine. You're not with an official group.
No, I'm not.
From what I understand, Lorraine, you said that until Trump came on the scene, you'd never really been a protester.
Never in my life.
So what's with coming here right now?
Well, it started with his campaign that I realized it was all based on hate. I was raised by a father who was a World War II veteran, to believe in the country, love your flag, and this was against everything I was raised to believe. So I felt as an American and as a woman, I had to stand up for my rights, take my country back again, make my father proud.
Okay, so Peter, there are lots of different issues, and people gathered here, a whole, collection of causes. But one thing that seems to unite them, and we were talking about this before, is that Americans say they're having a little bit of a hard time talking with each other right now. This is a bit of a new day. You have lots of Republican friends at work.
Yes.
What's that been like?
Yes, it was very, very awkward. After the election, I was devastated, almost like mourning a death. I wasn't able to even speak to my friends for about 2 weeks. I just needed time to just come to terms, to try to base everything back on our friendships, to maybe learn to disagree with respect. But I've lost a lot of respect for my friends based on the fact that they voted for Trump.
And you couldn't eat lunch with them?
I couldn't eat lunch with them for 3 weeks. Couldn't even look most of them in the eye because I just didn't understand how my friends could think that was okay, that everything he was saying was okay.
Okay, Lorraine, thank you very much. So learning to disagree with respect, that might as well be carved into some of the buildings along this route today, Peter. It's something lots of people here are saying they are really trying to learn how to do. Back to you, Peter.
All right. Okay, Adrian. Thank you. We'll be back to Adrian lots throughout the next few hours as we monitor not only what's happening up on the podium, but what's happening down on the street. With that many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people there, it'll be interesting to watch how they respond. A lot's happening over these next couple of hours. You've already seen some things that have taken place, but I want to give you a sense of what to expect. So watch this. Over the next hour or so, past presidents will arrive: George W. and Laura Bush, Bill and Hillary Clinton, Jimmy Carter. George H.W. Bush is not coming due to health issues. And of course, the Obamas will also be here. Opening remarks begin at 11:30. Trump will be sworn in at noon by U.S. Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. You may remember Barack Obama had Aretha Franklin singing at his first inauguration, Beyoncé at his second. The national anthem will be sung today by 16-year-old reality TV star Jackie Evancho. She was on America's Got Talent. The Mormon Tabernacle Choir performs for a sixth inauguration, minus one member who refused to sing for the president-elect. After the ceremony, the Obamas will leave Capitol Hill by helicopter as private citizens. The new president, vice president, and their families will parade down Pennsylvania Avenue back to the White House. There will be marching bands and the Rockettes perform. Again, minus a few who refused the gig. The day wraps up with the glitz and glamour of inaugural balls. Obama attended 9 the night of his first inauguration. Trump reportedly plans to go to 3, including one in New York City. And you may have read that the Obamas plan to stay in Washington in the future. They're going to live here in Washington, especially until their daughters have finished the schooling that's taking place here. But immediately, as you saw, they're going to leave in a helicopter, heading out to Andrews Air Force Base, and then off in Air Force One to the president's plane. The President Trump has agreed to let them use it one last time as they head to Palm Springs in California, where they're going to take an extended break. All right, let's go to New York City, outside what some people are calling the New York City White House. That's Trump Tower. Our Stephen D'Souza is there. Stephen.
Thanks, Peter. Yeah, this is a site that many people around the world have become very familiar with since Donald Trump was elected president. And it's not too often in American history that you can say that moving into the White House for a president is a step down. But when you live in a 3-story penthouse on Fifth Avenue that's more pink marble and gold than white, well, that's the case for Donald Trump. And in New York City, Donald Trump really personifies all of the brashness of New York City. Not necessarily the city's favorite son. People in the city and the state voted overwhelmingly against him, but they're going to get used now to the fact that their president is living here, or is going to live here at least part-time. That's what we hear. We know his son Barron, 10-year-old Barron, and his wife Melania will stay here on Fifth Avenue, probably up until in the summer when he finishes school, and that President-elect President Trump will be making trips back here quite often. And that's going to be quite an adjustment for the city, because when the president is in town, securing this area costs upwards of $500,000 a day. And so the barricades, the heavily armed police behind me in front of Trump Tower, that is now going to be a permanent fixture over the course of President Trump's term. And so that's something people are going to get used to. It's already become a tourist site, people snapping photos here. Small handful of protesters out right now, but we're expecting more later this morning, including a large number to come to coincide with the inauguration. So having a president living right in the heart of Manhattan, making the trip between DC and New York, that is a new normal that a lot of Americans are starting to adjust to, Peter.
All right, Stephen, thank you very much. Just to bring you up to date on where we are, the Trumps and the Obamas are at the White House. They're having coffee, probably going over a few things about what it's like to live in that house as well. Then this elaborate dance starts once both the Obamas and the Trumps leave the White House to come up here to Capitol Hill in about an hour's time to do the actual physical transfer of power with the swearing in of the new president. There's this elaborate dance that takes place at the White House. It goes on for about 4 or 5 hours, where they literally move the Obamas out. Everything's packed, obviously, but they move everything out, and they move the Trumps in. And in that process, they paint walls, they change rugs, they hang new pictures up. I mean, it's the whole deal. It happens in 5 hours. Now, that never happens to us, does it? When we move, it takes usually a little longer than that. Anyway, that'll be going on. So we've got lots of things to show you over these hours ahead. And in this first hour, we're going to take the odd break here because we want to go wall-to-wall coverage once Trump arrives here, President-elect Trump and President Obama arrive here on Capitol Hill. So as we go to our first break, something else we've been doing over these last few weeks, we've been crossing the country, the United States, and getting thoughts from different Americans about what their message to President Trump would be. A Dear Mr. Trump letter. Here's the first one.
Dear President Trump, I'm Amanda Head and I live in Los Angeles, California. And my hope for your presidency is that since we as Republicans control all 3 chambers of government, that you and your constituents hold yourselves accountable to the promises that you've made to me and my fellow Americans, because we certainly will. Joblessness, our national debt, a completely broken immigration system, and the utter collapse of our inner cities have been the results of liberal policies that have caused many Americans to lose faith in their elected officials. We love our country and we love what it stands for. So please, President Trump, make every effort to follow through on the promises that you've made and make America great again. To some of us, it feels like that's already happening.
Dear Mr. President Trump, My name's Gary Morton, and I live in Boston, Massachusetts. Although I didn't vote for you, I do wish you much success as our president. I hope that you are blessed with good guidance and a team that will support you to achieve success, not just for you, but for our country. I truly wish you all the best, Mr. President.
Well, another one of our Dear Mr. Trump, Dear President Trump, video messages for the new president from different Americans that we've bumped into across this country over the last few months. And an interesting mix, as you will see as we go through the evening. So we're still, obviously, a little over an hour away from the formal arrivals happening. But right now, some of the arrivals of different members of Congress and various dignitaries arriving up on Capitol Hill who will take their place in the seats surrounding the spot where the swearing in will take place. And remember, there will be the swearing in of the new Vice President, Mike Pence, and then the swearing in of the new President, Donald Trump. Those will take place one after the other, right outside on the steps of Capitol Hill. You hear the helicopters going over. There are going to be lots of those throughout this day. The security cameras, the helicopters, and the television helicopters that are flying overhead. So we'll keep all of those in mind, and that sound conflict that occasionally happens through all this. Let's bring in Rosemary Barton, the host of Power and Politics, who has been doing her program down here in Washington the last couple of days and will continue later on this afternoon. But today, during the inauguration ceremonies, Rosie's kind of thinking Canada and watching out for things that may happen Canadian angle, but also monitoring social media. As we know, this soon-to-be president loves social media, especially Twitter. What are you hearing? What are you seeing?
Well, I mean, let's start with Canada. Today is a big day for us, too, and things are about to change for our nation by virtue of course, where we are, and also by virtue of our economic relationship, the $2 billion or so of trade that goes back and forth every day between the two nations. So we've heard at length the kinds of things that Trudeau's government, our Prime Minister's government, has done to try and prepare for this day. A cabinet shuffle to try and get the right people in place, to try and get the channels of communication open. Today, Ambassador McNaughton, who both you and I spoke to over the past couple of days, he'll be at that ceremony, working the room as he does so well. And a number of cabinet ministers will be down where you are today as well, not just the new Minister of Foreign Affairs, Chrystia Freeland, but also the Minister of National Defense, the Minister of Natural Resources. So all of those indications, whether they get FaceTime with anyone in the administration today is another issue, but all of those the beginnings of building these relationships start as of today, have already started. And there is a real preparation now for what this means. What they know it means from the get-go, of course, is trade. They know that trade has to be a top priority for our country and that we have to somehow make the case now to the Trump administration that this is a relationship worth keeping. So they are building that case, and they have already started some of those conversations. And those are going to start really from the get-go, because we now know that the new president, once he's president, wants to start opening NAFTA right away. So Canada has to prepare for that, and that's what they've been doing over the past couple of weeks.
Any Donald Trump tweets at all today? And there was a report overnight that he's cast aside his cell phone. He's not using it anymore.
Yeah, you know, I don't know if that's happened, but one of the things that I was talking to one of the congressmen that you saw there in the lineup going in, and he has this cell phone, right, that he makes calls on, and he's given his number to Paul Ryan and anybody else that wants to get in touch with him, and he still answers the phone. Security-wise, I don't know if that's sustainable, but I have a hard time believing, though, Peter, he'd give up his Twitter account. He tweeted one sort of generic tweet at the beginning of the day. There's been little since. President Obama, because he's still president, has sent out his final tweet, his final social media message, though, today as well. And, of course, we'll keep an eye on whether the new president, I don't know, maybe he's going to tweet from inside the car on his way down with President Obama.
We'll keep an eye on that, and
Yes,
so
we will.
so will Rosie. We'll be back to you. Rosie mentions that there are a fair number of Canadian cabinet ministers here, and they're actually in this building that we're in now, the Canadian Embassy. And Chrystia Freeland, the new Minister of Foreign Affairs, is one of them, and we hope to be talking to her actually in the next few minutes. So that should be interesting to see what she's expecting from this speech. In the meantime, let's go to Ottawa. Roland Paris joins us from Ottawa this morning, and Roland was the senior foreign policy advisor to the Prime Minister for most of the first year of the Prime Minister's mandate. He's back teaching at the University of Ottawa right now. Roland, when you watch this speech today, do you expect that there's going to be, I don't imagine there's going to be a segment on Canada, but do you expect that there'll be something in that speech that we should be paying particular interest to?
Well, as you say, Peter, I don't expect Canada to be mentioned. I don't recall Canada ever being mentioned specifically in any inaugural address, and President Trump, during his campaign and in the transition, hasn't spoken a lot about Canada. But I would expect, or I wouldn't be surprised at least, if NAFTA comes up, since that's something that he has talked a lot about. And all the indications are, as Rosie said, that the new Trump administration is likely to move on NAFTA quickly. Obviously, we also, I think, need to be paying attention to anything else he says about international affairs.
On NAFTA, it'll be interesting to see whether it's the original promise of, tear the whole thing up, or whether it's finesse a couple of the key irritant points for the United States, and for that matter, some areas that Canada wouldn't mind fixing on.
Yeah, it's true. There have been a lot of mixed messages about NAFTA. I think the very good news is the indication that the Trump administration isn't planning on going ahead with an across-the-board tariff import duty for goods going into the United States. That would have been potentially extremely damaging for Canada. In addition, the indication that the focus tariffs that they've been talking about are likely only to be applied to countries that they feel are trading unfairly with the United States. And there's no indication at all that Canada is being targeted by the United States, and that's good news. On the other hand, we don't know how any NAFTA discussion is going to play out. We don't know if we could potentially be sideswiped in measures that the United States could take against other countries, which is why it's so important that the Trudeau government continue its outreach efforts, not just with the new administration, with Congress and at the local and state level, and that we remain here vigilant and ready to vigorously defend our interests if they should be threatened.
All right, Roland, stand by. Don't go away, because I want to check in with you on something else in a moment. But I want to bring in a couple of our correspondents who are covering the world on this day, because the world is watching what happens behind me here in the next couple of hours. They'll be especially watching in Moscow. They'll be watching in Tehran as well. The Iranian relationship with the United States is a key one. So we've got Susan Ormiston in Moscow and Nala Ayed in Tehran today, and we want to get their quick thoughts. So let me begin with Susan in Moscow. Susan, give us a sense of how Moscow is thinking about this day.
Peter, for Russia, Donald Trump is an opportunity. Relations between the U.S. and Russia have cratered to an all-time low under Barack Obama's administration, and the Kremlin wants a warming of the relationship. It appears that Donald Trump does too. He's been quite flattering of the Russian president, saying he admires President Putin, he admires his control over this country. So there is a possibility that these two big actors will work more closely together. But of course, each wants something from the other. On Russia's list, well, a solution in Syria with American cooperation, pushing back NATO from Russia's borders and lifting those economic sanctions. But Trump and his team still can't escape persistent, consistent investigations, inquiries by U.S. intelligence agencies into their past dealings with Russia. The Kremlin has said it had no influence over the American election. But in recent days, we've seen a kind of softening, a wait-and-see approach, a stepping back from the enthusiasm over Trump, at least from the Russian government. They're saying talk is cheap, words are words. Let's see what Donald Trump actually does. So will Russians be watching the inauguration? You bet. There's a party planned in central Moscow for Trump supporters. We visited a bar last night with a Trump band. And Peter, in the markets, you can find these charming Matryoshka dolls. Of course, we've seen them before. This one's kind of interesting. Inside, the family Trump with Melania, of course, and underneath, here's Ivanka and little teeny-weeny miniature two of Donald's sons. This is Donald Jr. right here. So this is the Trump family dynasty for sale in Moscow markets and soon to be in the White House. Peter.
Where that expense account goes. Thanks, Susan Ormiston, in Moscow for us today. All right, we talked about Tehran as well, where Nala is, and that relationship is a really tricky one, Iran, United States, no matter who's in the White House. But Donald Trump has had a lot of things to say, as we know, about the Iranian nuclear deal that was signed by Barack Obama. So Nala's been there all this week. Nala, give us a sense of what you're hearing.
Peter, the Trump inauguration is competing with some big local news here. The collapse yesterday of an iconic high-rise in central Tehran, killing at least 20 firefighters, possibly more. But of course, as you might imagine, the Trump inauguration is still big news and has been actually for throughout the week. And he has appeared on front pages here in newspapers, on state television, and of course, as usual, in political cartoons like this one. And the reason is that it's not just because he's becoming president, but because he has been outspoken about the nuclear deal that Iran signed with world powers about 2 years ago, saying that he wants to tear it up. Now, both the foreign minister and the president here spoke out about these comments, saying that there is no undoing this deal, there's nothing more to negotiate. But on the hardline side, and we heard this at Friday prayers today, both from formal speakers and ordinary people, that they don't care who the next U.S. president is, that as far as they're concerned, the U.S. Cannot be trusted, and that it is the embodiment of evil, and that Iran is stronger. As this mural here on this square says, that it celebrates Iranian superior power and mocks American humiliation. Now, of course, like everywhere else, there is a range of opinion here. Some people have told us that they're afraid of unpredictability under Trump, that perhaps his antagonism might translate one day to war. Others have told us that perhaps as a businessman, he might be more pragmatic about this region. No matter what, though, when they compare him to Barack Obama, who, after his inauguration about 8 years ago, actually directly spoke to the Iranian people through a videotape saying that he wants to use a diplomatic approach to dealing with Iranian people using honesty and mutual respect. People here are not expecting that tone from Trump, and in fact, they're worried that what's coming is worse than business as usual. Peter.
All right, Nala, thank you. So that's the feeling in Moscow and in Tehran. What's the other country overseas that the Americans, and especially Donald Trump, have had a lot to say about during the campaign? China. Sasha Petrusik is in Beijing for us, and here's what he has to say about the thinking there. Sasha.
Here in Beijing, people are watching with curiosity and concern. Donald Trump has always been a larger-than-life figure in China, as a businessman, someone they could respect, and initially someone they thought they could deal with, negotiate with. Well, now that he's about to take office, people here are nervous, not only the people on the streets, but their leaders as well. That's because Donald Trump is considered unpredictable and undiplomatic. Nervous also because he seems to be suggesting through his tweets and threats that he wants to give more recognition to Taiwan. That self-governing island is considered part of China by Beijing, and any move toward it is considered very dangerous, a threat to its territory. China's also worried about a looming trade war between it and the United States, especially since the economy here has been slowing down to its lowest point in more than a quarter century.
All right, Sasha, thanks very much. So there's the snapshots from three major countries that'll be watching this speech. These doors are the White House. We're keeping our eye on that, and we will continue to do so, because that's the area where Donald Trump and Barack Obama are right now just behind those doors and in the what's called the Blue Room, having a coffee and a conversation before they leave to head over to the Capitol building. So we'll keep our eye on that. Let me quickly go back to Roland Paris in Ottawa, just to tie the knot on this conversation, Roland. When we hear from Susan and Nala and Sasha, you get a sense that there could be a major shift coming in foreign policy for the United States based on some of the things and the unpredictable nature of Donald Trump. Do you expect, if there is going to be a shift, that we'll get our first major hint of that in this speech?
It's hard to say, Peter, of course. I would expect him to be emphasizing the America First strategy, which he has been talking about all along. That seems to indicate a break with traditional American foreign policy. You know, the big picture is that since the end of World War II, American administrations have generally sought to sustain a framework of relationships and alliances and institutions that have supported a broadly open and, you know, generally peaceful international order. Donald Trump doesn't seem to be interested in that strategy. He's much more transactional. He seems to want to make deals with individual countries, seems to want to use American power to extract concessions in those particular bilateral deals. How that will play out for each country, including Canada, is uncertain. What's also uncertain is what that means for the international order.
All right. Roland, listen, thank you. We'll get back to you later on after we've heard the speech, I'm sure. Roland Paris with us in Ottawa. You see down at the bottom of your screen, is that Bernie Sanders there in the back? Looks like it is, yes, arriving on Capitol Hill along with other senators and congresspeople. You know there is a boycott by a significant number of Democratic Congress members. 65, I think, was the last count I saw, who won't be taking part in the ceremonies here today. Still very upset over the back and forth between Donald Trump and John Lewis, the iconic member of Congress for his civil rights days and actions. So members of well, this looks like the Trump family coming in now. That was his son-in-law. And let's see who else. Well, there's going to be a mix of them, and we'll keep an eye on how things are working out there in terms of the arrivals. There are lots of them to take place over these next few hours. Watching all this from down in the street, hundreds of thousands who've gathered to watch the inaugural ceremony on Capitol Hill, and one of them is our Lindsay Duncombe. Lindsay.
Peter, we're standing in the ticketed section here on the mall. All of these people, many of them Trump supporters who got their tickets from their members of Congress, many of them incredibly excited for this day, which many of them admit they were surprised actually is here, and enthusiastic to welcome not just the Republican president, but a Republican Congress too. And part of today's ceremonies will be a benediction from a pastor from Detroit. Members of his church are here to watch that and witness that, including Denise. Denise, Donald Trump came to your church as part of an outreach for African Americans. How are you feeling about this inauguration?
I'm excited about it. I'm really thrilled to be here. And as a Christian, we just love on everyone that comes, and we're all the same. In God's eyes, we're all the same. So I'm just excited to be here.
What does Donald Trump have to do to reach out to many African Americans who didn't vote for him?
I think he just has to be true to who he is and learn, you know, be open for suggestion and ideas.
Thank you very much, Denise. And it's amazing, Peter, with the people that I have spoken to, how many people here say that they are praying for Donald Trump, that they really hope that he will carry the weight of this office, which many people here didn't expect him to have, but are very excited that he is the one taking the oath today. Back to you, Peter.
All right, Lindsay, thank you very much. Lindsay down in the, as she said, in the ticketed area where you've actually got to purchase a ticket to get in close, relatively close to the area where the inauguration is taking place. And then there's lots of free space back from there. We'll see just how much of that fills up. You remember the iconic pictures in 2009 when Barack Obama was here, and there were 2 million people for the first African-American president of the United States. Today they're expecting somewhere around half that number. We'll see how that plays out. Jennifer Carroll back with us again today. Jennifer, you've been patient watching all these different people from around the world talking about this, which gives us all a sense of how critical this is in terms of not just American policy and American affairs, but world affairs. But let me pick up on that point that Lindsay was mentioning there, and it's this issue of how the new president will reach out to African Americans, because there's a sense that there is a wide gap there between him and them.
Well, he received 6% of the black votes during this presidential election. And so Donald Trump made a statement during his campaign that he wants to help particularly the poor in inner city areas that he felt have been left behind. He's received some opposition because out the bat, people say, well, he can't do it, and he's not going to do it because he's not our president. But he has shown during the time that he's been taken to appoint his secretaries, he's been meeting with people like Ray Lewis and others that have had community organizations to help combat the violent crime and the things that plague inner city. So he's going to have a lot on his plate to do, because he cannot make that fix overnight. And if he doesn't make a movement afoot really fast in the next year and a half, because the Congress is going to be re-elected in the next 2 years, so he really has about a year and a half to make a big dent into what his promises are, to showcase that he is true to his promises and he is leading in the direction to make things change for the inner city areas that have been left behind.
You know, it's like a constant election cycle, right? I mean, they talk a lot about the first 100 days, and I'm sure we'll talk about that over the next couple of hours, but really it is that first year and a half.
Yes.
If you're going to make change, significant change, you got to see it within that year and a half, because bang, right then you're into the midterm elections.
Well, because this is his moment. Because after this midterm election, if the Congress changes to Democrat, he's going to have a harder road to hoe to really get his agenda passed. He's talking about tax reform. He's talking about changing a lot of measures with immigration and the border. If he doesn't do all of these big things in the first year and a half, it's going to be very problematic if he loses any seats in the Congress in the next election cycle.
Which is what happened to Obama,
yes.
Right? Okay, thanks, Jennifer. Let's go back down into the street. Adrian Arsenault. Adrian.
Hey there, Pete. It's getting louder. Thank you, Mr. Helicopter. There was a great big chorus of boos here, actually, not that long ago, when the presidential convoy made its way to the Capitol. That was for President-elect Trump. Dave Mongold was not booing, though. This man is a proud Donald Trump supporter. You stand out a little bit where we're standing right here in the protest zone.
Definitely.
How do you feel about that?
I don't care. They can do whatever they want. They believe what they want to believe, and that's the great thing about this country, is that everybody can believe what they want.
So far, it seems pretty civil. Anybody giving you stink eye?
Occasionally, but I don't really know. Probably more than what I can see.
We were talking earlier, Dave and I, Peter, about what issue has drawn him, and I think it's safe to say, I mean, you thought about it a lot, but you sort of zeroed in on immigration.
Right.
Why is that?
I just think they need to weed out the bad people that are been in this country for far too long. So.
You want him to get rid of them?
The bad ones, yes. The good ones can stay because they're hardworking, honest people.
And you were saying also that you're kind of glad he's not a politician.
Right, yes. That's one reason why I voted for him.
Okay. All right. I know you're getting lots of looks. I can see it. But Dave's going to hang out here for a little bit, as will we. Back to you, Peter.
All right, Adrian, thanks very much. I want to show you some pictures of something just happened in the last little while, because tensions between the protesters and police are picking up a little bit. This happened not far from here, just a couple of blocks from here, where police had to use pepper spray to break up a protest that was going on. These are expected. We saw a little bit of it last night as well. We expect to see it throughout today. Big protest march tomorrow. we'll just have to, monitor this carefully through the day and see how much of this gets in the way of the inauguration event. So we got choppers flying above us here as well. So that's the noise you hear in the background, but we've been joined by special guests here on our set overlooking the Capitol Hill from the Canadian Embassy, and that, of course, is Chrystia Freeland, Canada's new Minister of Foreign Affairs. It's great to have you with us.
Great to be with you, Peter.
When you are listening to this speech, what will Canada's interest be in terms of what's said? What will you be looking for?
Peter, I think, first of all, I'm going to be focused on our economic relationship with the United States. As I think Canadians know very well, our trading relationship with the United States is the strongest, most balanced, most mutually beneficial trading relationship in the world. Canada is the top export market for 35 U.S. states, and 9 million U.S. jobs depend directly on exports to Canada. And that's something really important for us as a Canadian government to explain to this incoming administration.
Because we had a sense that from our talks with the ambassador just the other day that perhaps some of the people closest to Donald Trump didn't realize those numbers.
You know what? I think it is no surprise to any Canadian that we spend a little more time thinking about the United States than they spend thinking about us. It's natural, right? There's 36 million of us. And so one of our jobs as a government is to explain those things to the United States. We've been working hard with the President-elect's transition team to start making that case and really just explaining some of the numbers.
Now, one of your particular interests, of course, and concerns is based on Russia and in particular the President Putin. How worried are you about the kind of things you've heard the soon-to-be president say about Vladimir Putin?
I listened with great interest to the confirmation hearings of the new cabinet, and I felt that what we heard, particularly from the Secretary of Defense, was very much in line with Canadian policy, including strong support for NATO.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about the Secretary of Defense. The President-elect has said continuously things about President Putin that you would never hear coming from you or from Prime Minister Trudeau. Does that worry you?
Peter, I think that it is well known to both Canadians and Americans that we have a different government from the U.S. government, and our government has some quite different values. So we'll be waiting with interest to see what the President-elect says on a number of issues. But I think the really important point, which we have been making to this administration, and we really feel that we're being heard, is we have had lots of changes of government in Canada, in the United States, and notwithstanding those changes, the core relationship, which is about strong, mutually beneficial economic ties, about this incredibly long border, about us being great neighbors and having a great security partnership, that relationship has endured a lot of elections because our common interest is so strong. And that's going to be the conversation that we're going to have with this new administration. And I'm really confident that it's going to be a good relationship.
One conversation that you would find, I'm sure, one that you wouldn't have any trouble having is with his nominee for Secretary of National Intelligence, because he too has been banned from entering Russia.
That is true. We have some things in common.
Have you talked to him?
Not yet.
All right. Minister, thank you very much for taking the time.
Pleasure to talk to you always.
Okay. Let's head right up to Capitol Hill, just a few meters, as we say, from the spot where Donald Trump will swear his oath to the American flag, the American Constitution, and to the American people. Paul Hunter is there. Paul.
Yeah, hey, Peter. I was a Boy Scout, so I come prepared, and I brought binoculars, but as it turns out, you don't really need them here. This is a fantastic spot. I've been kind of doing some political celebrity watching, and they're all here now. I mean, as I look over there, I see Newt Gingrich and Chris Christie and Marco Rubio and Cory Booker, Reince Priebus, some of Donald Trump's family just walked in. And, you were talking about, what are we going to hear from when Donald Trump gives his inaugural address. And, you know, he gave a hint of that last night at the Lincoln Memorial down the far end of the mall when he talked about unity. And you've been talking a lot about unity on the program here. And I think the question is, you know, how far will he push that? How sincere will he be? Will people believe him? I mean, D.C. is a particular place, right? But you're talking about the trip down this morning on the subway. I got in a taxi and they had talk radio on, and the first thing the announcer said was 1,407 days, and we're going to count down because that's the number of days until the end of the Donald Trump presidency. Last night on the way home from work, I saw Republicans and Democrats shouting at each other on the streets. I mean, it's visceral. Right? Can Donald Trump bring that back?
Paul, sorry, got to interrupt you because Donald Trump and Barack Obama have just exited the White House, and after their coffee, and now they'll share a car ride to Capitol Hill for the swearing-in ceremony, the formal inauguration address, and we will get the opportunity to hear them, and you wish you could hear them in this limousine as they make the drive from the White House. Short drive. Started back in 1933, the idea, one of the first ones anyway, by vehicle, was FDR, but it actually goes back even 100 years before that when they used to do it by carriage with the new president alongside the exiting president. And you wonder just what they would talk about. You especially wonder with these two, given their history, which we've been through any number of times over these last few days. But they will, I imagine it'll be a little bit of small talk. Probably some, well, there are the Clintons. The former president, number 42, Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton, who I'm sure can't go through a day like this without wondering what it would have been like for her. I mean, I'm sure she had thought many times that this was going to be her day, and a historic day of a different kind. If she had won the election, but she didn't, they're in place here on Capitol Hill as well, as the motorcade begins its route to Capitol Hill, and we'll keep an eye on it. But we're joined here now by Ronna Ambrose, the leader of the Federal Conservative Party, who is here in Washington as well and taking advantage of the view from the Canadian Embassy.
Beautiful view.
It is. It's fantastic. Now, tell me, what is important for you in terms of this day and why you chose to be here for it?
Well, I think it's an important day for Canadians and the Canadian government, all parliamentarians, to show the incoming administration that we are here to work with them. I mean, I've been here for the last 3 days meeting with senators and congressmen to make the case that our economic relationship is the strongest in the world and that partnership is solid. It's $800 billion in trade that goes back and forth across our borders, and that we're friends. We've fought wars together, and that any of this protectionist talk about a tax on Canadian goods is not a good idea. Great to hear yesterday from the incoming Treasurer, U.S. Secretary, that there will not be a tax on Canadian goods, not a broad tax. And I have to say, when I arrived in Washington, I was anxious because of things that I've heard from Mr. Trump, from his tweets, from some of his rhetoric during the election. But talking to congressmen and senators, I was reassured that they also recognize the incredible importance of our relationship together economically, as friends, as allies, and I feel much more comforted and reassured now, thinking that I know there will be challenges. I know that, you know, if there is renegotiations of NAFTA, and let's face it, NAFTA is 25 years old. I mean, the internet wasn't even discovered then. I mean, it is an old agreement. Maybe we can modernize it. Hopefully there's things we can do that will make it a better agreement for all parties. But I'm sure there will be challenges.
There will be challenges, for sure. What I find interesting, I'm sure viewers do too, is many of the things you just said are similar to what Chrystia Freeland just said here. The sort, but the sense that we have to continually make the case about the strength of the relationship
Absolutely.
and the history of the relationship every time there's a new administration here.
Well, I think we do recognize that even with the transition of power, it doesn't matter what the political stripe of the president is. This country is our best friend, biggest ally, and we are to them as well. But I do think that that trading relationship is important to recognize, and we have to remind every congressperson, every senator of that, because right now there is this protectionist sentiment out there. We see it in different parts of the world, not just in the United States. So we need to make that. I'll give you an example. I was with a congressman from Michigan yesterday, and I brought a fact sheet with me to give him. And he was surprised to find out there's $3 billion in Canadian exports out of his small district into Canada. 50-some Canadian companies operate in his district. Thousands of jobs are in his district rely on trade with Canada. And when we started to talk about it, he said, I recall a story hearing, because of course he's in Michigan, it's the auto sector, that a piston that was built in his area crossed the border 9 times back and forth before it was actually put into a vehicle. So he's acknowledged, wow, this border tax wouldn't be good for us either. And now we're all relieved to find out that's not going to happen. But I think there's nothing wrong with us sitting down with our counterparts here and just reminding them, free trade is good for Canada and it's good for the United States.
All right, I'm getting pushed here to move on because we're getting closer, but I can't resist asking you one last quick question. Your party's in the middle of a leadership race. What's the lesson watching this man, who nobody thought could win, end up on that stage?
That anything's possible? But I mean, he is a very unique individual, and I think there was circumstances in the United States that we don't have in Canada. A vast income disparity in some parts of the country. The healthcare system is much different than ours, so that's a big debate here in the United States. They have an immigration issue with Mexico that we don't have in Canada. So they do have issues here that they were dealing with that we don't have in Canada. But I don't think anyone imagined that we would be sitting here watching Donald Trump become the President of the United States. So I guess anything's possible.
Well, one thing they keep telling us that isn't possible is that you'll run.
That's right. But I'm enjoying the time that I have here, and it's great to be here to connect with people in the United States and remind them how much we care about this country and that we value the relationship.
All right. Listen, thank you very much for stopping by. Enjoy the day.
Thank you, you too.
Ronna Ambrose. Let's quickly go back up to the area where the inauguration will take place. Paul Hunter. Paul.
Just picking up on some of the things you were talking about there, and the fact that nobody really expected this, and to draw Barack Obama back into it. Now, I think it was in one of his exit interviews that he's been doing recently, or it might have been at his press conference this week, I can't remember, but I thought he was very generous in talking about Donald Trump. And one of the, I think, valuable things that he said was, don't underestimate this guy. I mean, he won the presidency. I mean, that's no easy task, and he went and did that. So for those who think, he ain't ready for the job, he can't do it, he's no good, all the naysayers, says Barack Obama, think about it. He got this job. So the real test, of course, begins now. Donald Trump himself may well say, you say one thing on the campaign trail, another thing in the office. Well, he's about to test that second part.
All right. Paul, don't go away. We're just keeping an eye on the secondary screen we have here. The Clintons have arrived. Jimmy Carter has arrived, in his 90s now, and was fighting some health issues not that long ago. But he seems to be in much better shape today. Everybody keeping in mind the situation with George H. Bush, number 41, the 41st president, the president before the Clintons, before Bill Clinton was there. And there you saw Jimmy Carter in the background, Rosalind Carter as well. Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton taking their spots in the area. George W. Bush is here. George H. Bush, not well, has had difficulties, is in hospital in Texas. And dealing with complications that appear to be surrounding pneumonia. But on this day, former presidents and someone who had hoped to be a president, obviously, in Hillary Clinton, who is on stage and there for this swearing in. Paul, give us a quick sense of, in just 15 seconds or less, what it's like up there, temperature-wise.
A lot milder than it was in 2009 when it was beyond bitterly cold. It's actually quite nice. It's dried up. I want to say it's almost perfect. It's pretty good, Peter.
Paul, thanks very much. We'll be back to Paul a lot, but let's check in and remind everybody why we're here.
Do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability,
preserve, protect,
and defend
the Constitution
of the United States.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
There are just 35 words in the oath of office, 3 that matter: preserve, protect, defend. What will they mean to Donald J. Trump? How will he, as president, uphold them? America is divided. The world is on edge. His term and his time starts now. This is the inauguration of President Donald Trump. And George W. Bush and Laura Bush arriving on Capitol Hill. You see the Clintons in the background. Justice Clarence Thomas is back to us in the foreground. And Chief Justice John Roberts, sort of in the middle of your picture there. He will be taking or giving the oath to Donald Trump. Hopefully he'll do better than he did with Barack Obama on the first time round, because he kind of mixed it up a little bit and they had to do it again the next day. Nevertheless, that's all taking place on the dais on Capitol Hill. We've got our reporters right across the world, really. We've got Adrian, who's here, Susan Ormiston, Moscow, Nala Ayed in Tehran, Rosie Barton here in Washington at our bureau here, and Stephen D'Souza in New York. And here's the Capitol building, as we said, you know, one of the great historic structures around the world, recognized everywhere. The U.S. Capitol opened up in around 1800 as the shift. Many people forget that the capital of the United States used to be New York City. The Capitol building was one of the signature moments when the Capitol shifted to Washington. Jennifer Carroll is with us again, former Lieutenant Governor of Florida. Not quite Florida weather here today, but
we'll get it there.
As Paul mentioned a moment ago, a lot warmer than it was 8 years ago. Couple of things. Speech. That speech will be an hour from now. Right now, in 1 hour, Donald Trump will be starting the speech. And is it going to be the very formal presidential Donald Trump, or will it be kind of a mix? Will we see some of that Trump fire that we used to see in the campaign? What do you think we're gonna see?
I think it's going to be a little bit more subdued. Last night when he addressed the crowd, it was a little bit more subdued and more humbling, and he talked about it's for the people. I think we're going to see that with his speech today. That same humility that came about as he addressed the crowd last night.
Everybody is talking about, and you've mentioned it before, that he's got to reach out. There's got to be some attempt here to not only make the case that he's going to be a president for all Americans, but to ask for time to show that he can be. Do you think there's any way that message can be received? It's hard in this crowd of protesters. The protesters who are here are unlikely to receive it. But out across the country, what do you think?
You have people that are skeptical. They're hopeful, because people that have been out of work and losing their home and cannot find a job through the job market situations for so long, they're hopeful. So those that support him will support him whatever, and those that are on the fence will make sure that he does what he said he's going to do.
Well, there they are, arriving on Capitol Hill. The outgoing president and the incoming president. And it's still, as anybody who knows the history of these two men, and you know it, it is surprising to see that at least they look like they're getting along.
Well, they have to, because that is a healing process. When you have such a battle that occurred in the primary and the general election, that this is how you bring the country together. This is how you bring the unity. So if President Obama gave objection, it's going to be a big divide, bigger divide than we see now.
But it goes beyond just the campaign. It goes back to the whole birther issue.
It does. Not only that, well, it was very fierce between the time of the birther issue and then the other issues with regards to the health care that was objectionable and other policies that President Obama wanted to bring about. So between the Republican-controlled House and Senate and then President Obama not getting some of his measures passed and then the executive orders that President Obama unilaterally implemented, those contentious things really brought us to where we are today.
Some of the Trump family heading in now is Eric Trump and Tiffany Maples, Ivanka,
Eric, Byron.
Yeah, Donald Jr. and Eric and Barron, the 10-year-old son. So they're all going in, getting ready to take their spots out there on the podium for this whole process, the swearing in of both the vice president and then the president as well. All will be witnessed by the outgoing president, Barack Obama, and Michelle Obama. So it will be quite a collection there.
And Justice Clarence Thomas is going to be administering the oath to the vice president.
He is, and the significance of that, well, on one hand, it's the first time a African-American justice of the Supreme Court will have administered an oath.
Correct.
But is there anything beyond that to keep in mind when you watch him do that?
When you watch the oath being given, well, first
by Clarence Thomas.
Well, Clarence Thomas, he's also looking at our divide in this country. Clarence Thomas have been a polarizing figure too with Democrats because they've seen him as not being truly an African American. But you know, he is on the Supreme Court justice. He has made history in being nominated and being appointed to the Supreme Court, and it is what it is. It's historic. And this is historic in itself. And President to-be, Donald Trump, he has to take his oath at 12 o'clock, noon today. So it's all timing in this event today.
And that will be given by John Roberts, the Chief Justice. Right. Because as we were saying, he did mess it up in 2009, and they literally had to do it again the next day to get the order of the words right, or there was a question about legitimacy.
Correct. Yeah. And the Constitution has it such that the words have to be spoken exactly as per the Constitution, the 20th Amendment to the Constitution.
So Donald Trump Jr. and his sister Ivanka now taking, and she's going to be a powerhouse, everybody says, in the White House. Her husband will be Jared Kushner, who we saw earlier arriving at his spot, is going to be a special counselor to the new president, and that's him there that you saw just got kissed by his wife. I saw the president talking last night about how if there was ever going to be Middle East peace, it would be resolved by Jared Kushner. Well, not too much pressure.
Well, let's see. I mean, many have tried before, but we will see. We can only hope. And one thing that we haven't talked about that usually is discussed, particularly in the TMZs of the world, is going to be the fashion, what style and what the women were wearing. And actually the first inaugural with Mrs. Obama, it was what style is she wearing and who was the designer for her clothing. Right. So it'll be interesting to hear the chatter about the designers for the First Lady to be.
Yeah, well, I won't be going there.
I hope not.
I'm not too good on that. Anyway, the Trump family, and they're it's a significant family in terms of numbers, and all of these people are, or many of them at least, are going to be players in what develops over the months and years ahead.
But you know, you said something very interesting there, that they're going to be players. Now, Donald Trump throughout the campaign has relied upon his children very heavily for the business as well as campaigning and advising. So he values their opinion very much in their leadership. So that's why I believe he's going to have them very close by.
You see in the box down in the bottom of your screen the protests that are going on in a number of places, and when you see protesters arriving with masks on, you know, they obviously do this to conceal their identities, but they're often, you know, pretty organized and pretty planned protests. There's the pepper spray being used by some of the officers who are trying to control the crowds as they skirt by one of the areas that have been used to by security to check the crowds coming in. So here's the long shot of the mall.
The mall is filling up pretty nicely.
It's still.
Barack Obama had the most ever.
Most ever.
For
2 million.
Yes.
And it was stacked right back to the monument, to the Washington.
All you saw
Monument.
were heads. You didn't even see the pavement at all.
Yeah, no, that's right. So they're expecting in the sort of 800 to 900,000. We'll see where that turns out, and there'll be various estimates, I'm sure, over these over the next hours and probably the next days. But the scene on top, where every seat you can be sure will be filled.
You know, this is exciting for people that are attending, the general public that's out there. It's not about Donald Trump himself. It's about the transition of power. It's about the ceremonial aspect. It's about being a part of history making. This is civics lessons, a lesson in action. And so they want to say, I was there at the moment of, as opposed to I'm there to support Donald Trump. You'll be surprised how many people that are attending did not support or vote for Donald Trump and or weren't even eligible to vote, but they're here because they want to be part of the process. They want to be part of this historical aspect of the transition of power.
Paul, join in here and in terms of when you look at that group on the stage area where all this will take place. I mean, you're looking at some of the biggest names in American politics from both sides of the aisle. It's quite a sight.
Yeah, what I found quite remarkable is a couple of things. One, everybody's taking selfies. Everybody's taking their phones out and snapping pictures of each other. And people, I just saw somebody went up to George W. Bush and Laura and asked for a photo with them. So they're just like regular people. Everybody's going up and getting souvenirs. But man, oh man, as I stand and talk to you now, there they are in a row. Jimmy Carter, Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Laura. It's sort of incredible. You know what I mean? It's something else, Peter.
You covered that campaign. You spent a lot of time watching Trump and Clinton, Hillary Clinton, throughout that. And you know, we've talked a lot about wondering what Barack Obama and Donald Trump are likely thinking of each other and saying to each other on that ride up to Capitol Hill. You've got to look at Hillary Clinton and wonder the thoughts that cross through her mind on a day like this.
She has a smile on her face today, Peter, and that's to her credit. And she has been, I don't know, generous is the right word, but her demeanor in the little bits and pieces that we've seen her, the Hillary in the Wild hashtag and such. But I think you're right. I mean, I think, remember election night when she didn't show up until the next day. That it just struck me, as most, that she was eviscerated by that. It's hard. Politics is a hard game, as we know. We've seen a lot of it in our time, Peter, and I just get the feeling that she couldn't believe it. And you know, and likewise to a degree Barack Obama, and the small talk he made starting in that visit in the Oval Office with Donald Trump, which, by the way, Donald Trump thought would last 15 minutes and went along a lot longer than that. But Barack Obama has emphasized throughout this last couple of months that they will do whatever they can to ensure that the transition goes smoothly and that his presidency begins on the right foot, because everybody wants it to succeed. This is their country at the end of the day. And I think also there's one thing to keep in mind in all of this, Peter, is You know, we talk about the popular vote went to Hillary Clinton, another factor in what she's thinking right now. But as we were talking on election night, tens of millions of Americans voted for Donald Trump for a reason, because his core message meant something to them. And so when we listen to his words when he gives his inaugural address here today, think about that as well. He has resonated with millions and millions and millions of Americans, and there's value in that.
It's an excellent point, and as Jennifer was mentioning earlier to us, you know, part of today will be the expectation of those tens of millions who voted for him, that is he going to deliver? Will we get a signal today of when he's going to deliver on the things that, the promises he made, the reasons why I voted for him? That's what they want to hear. It's unlikely that, you know, the inaugural speeches don't usually deal with specific issues, but more in terms of broad themes. But even in the broad themes, one assumes they will be listening closely and watching closely to see whether the boxes that they ticked off in their mind, the reason why they voted the way they voted, will be in this speech. So more to keep in mind and to watch in these hours ahead. More people arriving here. Michelle Obama coming down the stairs now. And Joe Biden's wife. Yeah. You know, sometimes when you look at Michelle Obama, who's got such a great reputation after her 8 years in office here, you kind of look at her in these last few days and it's like, okay, finally. we can leave. You know, it's been a tough 8 years on a lot of different fronts, and if for no other reason than the tiring nature of it. And here's the opportunity now. They're heading off to Palm Springs in California to take a break. So the positioning takes place. Governor Rick Perry, who's the designated energy cabinet secretary, which is always ironic, seeing as he promised to kill that department if he'd ever got the nomination as.
But that was amnesia. He got his memory back when he testified before committee. He didn't want to do it anymore.
Bernie Sanders, you know, next to Donald Trump, may well have been the greatest story of the last campaign. I mean, here was a guy nobody expected could do anything, sitting next to John McCain today, who got the support of millions of Americans. In some ways, in a similar way to the way Trump was. You know, and talking about their issues.
Bernie Sanders tapped into the millennials, which Hillary Clinton failed to do. She could not do it because she was of a different generation and spoke differently to them. And he captured what she needed to win. Here we are, the First Lady and the Vice President's wife coming on.
Yeah. This is the area immediately in front of the stage area, the ticketed area. You have to buy a ticket to get in there. Michelle Obama, Jimmy Carter there in the background, and Joe Biden, who the Vice President's wife, Jill Biden. W, as he's known, George W. Bush, standing next to Hillary Clinton, and they were in conversation there a few moments ago.
I wonder, you know, the media was given a copy of President-elect Trump's speech. I wonder if President-elect Trump will tweet his speech out before he gives it. Yeah. President Obama was the first to webcam his speech as well as have closed captioning.
Right.
And President Clinton, as we see here on the screen, he was the first to do his streaming live on the internet. Calvin Coolidge was the first to do his on the radio. So let's see what President Trump tweets his out, if that's going to be historic or not.
Let's check in with Rosie if we got her at least on audio-wise to wondering in terms of whether there's been any social media breaking the speech. Is there anything out there yet, Rosie?
There isn't, but can I answer your other burning question that you didn't know the answer to? Because I do care what Melania's wearing. She's wearing she's wearing Ralph Lauren. She's wearing American designer Ralph Lauren. And here's why that's a story. Because a lot of American fashion designers, just like American celebrities, decided they were going to boycott the Trumps. And they weren't even going to offer or anything to Melania. They didn't want her wearing the clothes. And so somehow she's managed to get a Ralph Lauren outfit. So you'll see her later in that. So that answers that burning question. That's what I'm here for. The other thing I wanted to tell, we did get a tweet from Hillary Clinton because
Melania Trump now.
There she is in sporting, in her Ralph Lauren. We did get a tweet from Hillary Clinton because I think everybody watching Hillary Clinton's face today is wondering what's going through her mind. Yep. Remember, defeated candidates just don't show up. It's because she happens to be married to the former president that she's there. So she tweeted today, "I'm here today to honor our democracy and its enduring values. I will never stop believing in our country and its future." I would say that her face is one of resignation, and she's obviously seems to be feeling the moment and the loss, which was a bitter one. And she, I think, as well as so many people, so many Democrats that are out there on the street protesting and others, will want to hear something from the president about unity and about maintaining democracy. One of the things we're not talking about, and we can talk about it more throughout the coverage, though, is the potential for problems for this family that we're seeing in front of us. For the fact that the president has not divested himself of his personal businesses, that he has brought Jared Kushner, his daughter, into the White House in advisor roles. How is that going to work, and what kind of potential conflicts are going to open up there? I mean, there are some real problems that may very quickly develop on that front.
All right, Rosie, thank you, and thank you in particular for that updating us on the dress, on the fashion. Yeah,
better coming from me than you.
We'll add that to your biog now, keeping that in mind. Rosie Barton watching all this from our bureau here in Washington and monitoring not only social media but what's happening on the streets and keeping us up to date on that. Jennifer, as we watch the more members of the family, and especially Melania Trump coming out now, and
Mrs. Pence,
this hasn't. One assumes this has not been an easy few months. I mean, there's been a lot of stuff said about her husband. A lot of stuff has been put out into the public domain about her husband. His relationship with women that. It must have been very difficult for her. How has she handled all this?
Well, when she gave interviews to Barbara Walters and others, she said it was very hard to hear that because that's not the man that she knows. She says he could come across a little harsh, but he has a passionate heart. And we will see that as he governs here because his cabinet has very few women, surprisingly, considering his businesses. He prided himself during the campaign to have a lot of women in executive positions. So we'll see as he plans out his cabinet and how the makeup goes, that if he includes more women and have a little bit more diversity that way in his administration, will go a long ways for him.
Were you disappointed by that?
I was disappointed by that. I was disappointed that I didn't see also two more minorities in his selection of secretaries. But most of those people will last out maybe 5 years if he goes into his second term, and then you'll see a change of those secretaries as well.
Barack Obama, Joe Biden, pretty close relationship those two men have had over 8 years, and then you saw the medal, the Presidential Medal of Freedom that Barack Obama gave to Joe Biden just last week. So Barack Obama will be introduced and take his place. And to Rosie's point about Hillary Clinton and the odd nature of seeing the defeated candidate up there on this podium, it does rarely happen, and Rosie's quite correct. It's happening today, not because she was the defeated candidate, but because she's the wife of a former president. You got to go back through the old movie reels to see, you know, another comparison. One was 1961 when John Kennedy gave his inaugural address. When you look at the film, you go, well, gee, there's Richard Nixon. What's he doing there? He lost. He was there because he was vice president,
correct,
right, to Dwight Eisenhower. But it doesn't happen often.
But this is deja vu for Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
And it must be very, very hard for her to really swallow that poison pill. It doesn't taste very good. And to sit there and smile and still look gracious.
The Honorable Barack H. Obama and the Vice President Joseph R. Biden, escorted by Senate Democratic Secretary Gary Myrick, Senate Democratic Leader and Rules Committee Ranking Member Charles E. Schumer, and House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi.
They're getting a very resounding applause.
Some of the Democrats, and you saw, and maybe we'll see again here in a moment on Nancy Pelosi, that blue button that some of the Democrats are wearing is Protect Obamacare, which is one of the things, repeal and replace, that Trump promises he's going to do with the signature program of the Obama years, Obamacare, the health care program.
Well, additionally, Mr. Trump had said during the campaign what his things are going to be, and one was to repeal all, he said all, of President Obama's executive orders. I doubt we're going to see that on Monday when he starts work. We may see things for immigration, some of the executive orders for immigration, and we could even see the Keystone Pipeline, which will benefit Canada, and jobs for Nebraska and South Dakota come about in a short order. He also stated that was one of his priorities, to rescind.
Yeah. You want to come to Canada, Jennifer, and you'll hear that not everybody thinks it'll benefit.
True, but it may come one way or another,
yeah,
and if it benefits, it'll be great.
It may do.
That's going to be something. If we have the energy independence that Mr. Trump is talking about, that's going to really impede the economy in Russia. So they may not have the money to fuel their army to do the things in invading in Crimea and other military activities that they've been engaged in of late. So that could be a crippling effect if America really stood on its own for energy independence.
Well, the next person exiting those doors, or the next official dignitary who comes out of those doors, will be Donald Trump. And you can hear some in the crowd are starting to call his name, and there you see in the background Paul Ryan, the Speaker of the House.
Kevin McCarthy. There's the Trumpster, larger than life himself.
The Trumpster. I'm glad you said that.
This is the last time I'll be able to do that. He'd be President Trump after this. He has a long tie there.
He does. What's he like when the cameras are off?
I wonder if it's a Trump tie he has on.
Yeah. What's he like? You had a chance to talk. What's he like when the cameras aren't there?
He's really down to earth. He's a really personable person, and he loves people. He loves being around people, but he also loves a challenge. I think that's what makes him
he can get a bigger challenge than the one he's got now.
He got a huge challenge.
He's got a,
if you think the campaign was a challenge, he has a huge challenge because the whole world's weight is on his shoulders starting today. And you can see that in his face. He's taking this very seriously. The moment is coming to hit. You know, when I was elected lieutenant governor and taking the oath of office, the moment hits you like this is really real. It's coming to fruition now.
And you saw him just play to the cameras there. This, 2 years ago, this was a reality TV star. And, obviously the head of a big business empire, but, his name was made by that reality TV program.
Ladies and
extended his
Vice President-elect
his impact
Richard
around
Pence.
the country. There's Mike Pence, who will be vice president in just a few moments.
He's getting a good reception out there.
And as we said, it'll be Clarence Thomas, the Supreme Court Justice. 25 years now since Clarence Thomas made the Supreme Court. he will give the oath of office to Mike Pence.
Mike Pence is going to be that voice of reason and that the rock that Donald Trump is going to need to govern.
They talk about him as if he'd be like the prime minister, like a prime minister-president relationship.
Well, since Donald Trump does not have the experience in government, and Mike Pence has a lot of friends across the aisle and the experience in government, both at the state level and the national level, he's going to need him, and he should use him to guide him through this process so he doesn't fall into the landmines that he would normally otherwise if he didn't have that level of experience alongside him.
There's the Secretary of State nominee Tillotson in the background there.
Yeah, Donald Trump is starting today with not one secretary being voted in by the Senate.
And that's unusual.
It is.
He's got a number of lows when coming in. His approval ratings are incredibly low, between 30 and 40%.
It's low, but it's higher than it was during the campaign. So I guess there's some room to grow. Joe Biden is going to miss this. Joe Biden is a personal guy as well. I've had a chance to have some interaction with him.
The Senate Sergeant at
Arms,
Frank Larkin, the House Sergeant at Arms, Paul Irving, the Chairman of the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, Roy Blunt, Rules Committee Ranking Member and Senate Democratic Leader Charles C. Schumer, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Paul D. Ryan, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, and House Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi.
You know, it's interesting you have these folks opposing Donald Trump, but you wait till he gives his first State of the Union speech, and you're going to have these same Democrats that opposed him staying in the chamber early hours just to get to shake his hand when he comes in. It's amazing how this whole process works with these guys.
Yeah. As we saw the Republicans with Obama.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They were right there trying to shake his hands. Just touch the cloak of. But all this pomp and circumstance, some people say, why go through this ceremony? Almost every country goes through the transition of power like this ceremoniously somehow, ever since the essence of time.
The President-elect of the United States, Donald John Trump.
This is going to be interesting here, where Mike Pence went over and shook hands with the Clintons. I was wondering whether that might happen.
Let's see, the way how it's positioned, they're further in, so Mike Pence, I think, had more time to do so. Wow, mall really filled in, closer up. I was here for Bush 41's inaugural. It was cold, wet, snowing. I was miserable.
All right, well, this we're going to hand it over here to the MC, if you will, of what's going to unfold.
If you have a seat, you can sit down. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, Mr. President-elect, Mr. Vice President-elect, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States of America. Today, the legislative, the executive, the judicial branches of our constitutional government come together for the 58th inauguration of the President of the United States. Millions of people all over the world will watch and will listen to this event. 36 years ago at his first inauguration, It was also the first inauguration on this side of the Capitol. President Ronald Reagan said that what we do here is both commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace every 4 years since 1789, when President George Washington took this exact same oath. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789, and the example it sets for democracies everywhere. Washington believed the inauguration of the second president would be more important than the inauguration of the first. Many people had taken control of a government up until then, but few people had ever turned that control willingly over to anyone else. And as important as the transfer of the first transfer of power was, many historians believe that the next election was even more important. When in 1801, one group of people, arguably for the first time ever in history, willingly, if not enthusiastically, gave control of the government to people they believed had a dramatically different view of what the government would, should, and could do. After that election that actually discovered a flaw in the Constitution itself, which was remedied by the 12th Amendment, Thomas Jefferson, at that inauguration, beyond the chaos of the election that had just passed, said, "We are all Republicans, we are all Federalists." After 4 years of civil war, Lincoln's second inaugural speech tried to find reason for the continued war when he pointed out that both sides prayed to the same God. He'd earlier written about those fervent prayers that one side must be and both sides may be wrong. But in 1865, he looked to the future, and the memorable moment in that speech was "with malice toward none and charity for all." In the middle of the Depression, the country was told that the only thing we had to fear was fear itself. And President Kennedy talked about the obligation in democracy to country. The great question that day was, ask what you can do for your country. So we come to this place again, commonplace and miraculous, a national moment of celebration, but not a celebration of victory, a celebration of democracy. And as we begin that celebration, I call on His Eminence Timothy Michael Cardinal Dolan, Reverend Dr. Samuel Rodriguez, and Pastor Paula White Kane to provide readings and the invocation.
The prayer of King Solomon from the Book of Wisdom. Let us pray. God of our ancestors and Lord of mercy, you have made all things, and in your providence have charged us to rule the creatures produced by you, to govern the world in holiness and righteousness, and to render judgment with integrity of heart. Give us wisdom, for we are your servants, weak and short-lived, lacking in comprehension of judgment and of laws. Indeed, though one might be perfect among mortals, if wisdom which comes from you be lacking, we count for nothing. Now with you is wisdom, who knows your will and was there when you made the world, who understands what is pleasing in your eyes, what is conformable with your commands. Send her forth from your holy heavens, from your glorious throne dispatch her, that she may be with us and work with us, that we may grasp what is pleasing to you. For she knows and understands all things, and will guide us prudently in our affairs, and safeguard us by her glory. Amen.
From the Gospel of Matthew, the 5th chapter. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. He blesses those who are pure in heart, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And God blesses you when people mock you and persecute you and lie about you and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. For you are the light of the world, like a city on a hilltop that cannot be hidden. No one lights a lamp and then puts it under a basket. Instead, a lamp is placed on its stand where it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your good deeds shine out for all to see, that everyone will praise your heavenly Father. Respectfully, in Jesus' name.
We come to you, Heavenly Father, in the name of Jesus, with grateful hearts, thanking you for this great country that you have decreed to your people. We acknowledge we are a blessed nation with a rich history of faith and fortitude, with a future that is filled with promise and purpose. We recognize that every good and every perfect gift comes from you, and the United States of America is your gift, for which we proclaim our gratitude. As a nation, we now pray for our President, Donald John Trump, Vice President Michael Richard Pence, and their families. We ask that you would bestow upon our President the wisdom necessary to lead this great nation, the grace to unify us, and the strength to stand for what is honorable and right in your sight. In Proverbs 21:1, you instruct us that our leader's heart is in your hands. Gracious God, reveal unto our President the ability to know the will, your will, the confidence to lead us in justice and righteousness, and the compassion to yield to our better angels. While we know there are many challenges before us, in every generation you have provided the strength and power to become that blessed nation. Guide us in discernment, Lord, and give us that strength to persevere and thrive. Now bind and heal our wounds and divisions, and join our nation to your purpose. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. The psalmist declared, let your favor be upon this one nation under God. Let these United States of America be that beacon of hope to all people and nations under your dominion, a true hope for humankind. Glory to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Missouri State University Chorale.
Here are the voices of every creature, here are the calls in every heart. Here is the place of strangers welcome, we who once walked in strangers' shoes. Once we were strangers, dreams that build the day. Once we were strangers,
Well, the Missouri State University Chorale practices and performs about 2 blocks from my home in Springfield, Missouri, so it was easy to find them, and we're pleased they're here. It's also a great opportunity for me to introduce my colleague, the Senator from New York, Chuck Schumer.
My fellow Americans, we live in a challenging and tumultuous time, a quickly evolving, ever more interconnected world, a rapidly changing economy that benefits too few while leaving too many behind, a fractured media, a politics frequently consumed by rancor. We face threats, foreign and domestic. In such times, faith in our government, our institutions, and even our country can erode. Despite these challenges, I stand here today confident in this great country for one reason: you, the American people. We Americans have always been a forward-looking, problem-solving, optimistic, patriotic, and decent people. Whatever our race, religion, sexual orientation, gender identity, whether we are immigrant or native-born, whether we live with disabilities or do not, in wealth or in poverty, we are all exceptional in our commonly held yet fierce devotion to our country, and in our willingness to sacrifice our time, energy, and even our lives to making it a more perfect union. Today, we celebrate one of democracy's core attributes, the peaceful transfer of power. And every day, we stand up for core democratic principles enshrined in the Constitution: the rule of law, equal protection for all under law, the freedom of speech, press, religion, the things that make America, America. And we can gain strength from reading our history and listening to the voices of average Americans. They always save us in times of strife. One such American was Major Sullivan Ballou. On July 14, 1861, when the North and South were lining up for their first battle, a time when our country was bitterly divided and faith in the future of our country was at a nadir, Major Ballou of the 2nd Rhode Island Volunteers penned a letter to his wife, Sarah. It is one of the greatest letters in American history. It shows the strength and courage of the average American. Allow me to read some of his words, which echo through the ages. "My very dear Sarah," he wrote, "the indications are very strong that we shall move in a few days, perhaps tomorrow. If it is necessary that I should fall on the battlefield for my country, I am ready. I have no misgivings about or lack of confidence in the cause in which I am engaged, and my courage does not halt or falter. I know how strongly American civilization now leans upon the triumph of the government, and how great a debt we owe to those who went before us through the blood and suffering of the Revolution. And I am willing, perfectly willing, to lay down all my joys in this life to help maintain this government and to pay that debt. Sarah, my love for you is deathless. It seems to bind me to you with the mighty cables that nothing but omnipotence can break. And yet, my love of country comes over me like a strong wind and bears me irresistibly on with all these chains to the battlefield." Sullivan Ballou gave his life on the battlefield a week later at the First Battle of Bull Run. It is because Sullivan Ballou and countless others believed in something bigger than themselves and were willing to sacrifice for it that we stand today in the full blessings of liberty, in the greatest country on earth. And that spirit lives on in each of us, Americans whose families have been here for generations and those who have just arrived. And I know our best days are yet to come. I urge all Americans to read Ballou's full letter. His words give me solace, strength. I hope they will give you the same. Now, please stand while the Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, Clarence Thomas, administers the oath of office to the Vice President of the United States.
Place your hand on the Bible. Please read. Mr. Vice President-elect, would you raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Michael Richard Pence, do solemnly swear.
I, Michael Richard Pence, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely,
that I take this obligation freely,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office on which I'm about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. God bless you. God bless you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to introduce the Chief Justice of the United States, John G. Roberts, Jr., who will administer the presidential oath of office. Everyone, please stand.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President. Yeah!
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump.
Did I get that one right?
Chief Justice Roberts, President Carter, President Clinton, President Bush, President Obama, fellow Americans, and people of the world, thank you. We, the citizens of America, are now joined in a great national effort to rebuild our country and restore its promise for all of our people. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships, but we will get the job done. Every 4 years, we gather on these steps to carry out the orderly and peaceful transfer of power. And we are grateful to President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama for their gracious aid throughout this transition. They have been magnificent. Thank you. Today's ceremony, however, has very special meaning, because today we are not merely transferring power from one administration to another or from one party to another, but we are transferring power from Washington, D.C., and giving it back to you, the people. For too long, a small group in our nation's capital has reaped the rewards of government while the people have borne the cost. Washington flourished, but the people did not share in its wealth. Politicians prospered, but the jobs left and the factories closed. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. And while they celebrated in our nation's capital, there was little to celebrate for struggling families all across our land. That all changes starting right here and right now, because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you. It belongs to everyone gathered here today and everyone watching all across America. This is your day. This is your celebration. And this, the United States of America, is your country. What truly matters is not which party controls our government, but whether our government is controlled by the people. January 20th, 2017 will be remembered as the day the people became the rulers of this nation again. The forgotten men and women of our country will be forgotten no longer. Everyone is listening to you now. You came by the tens of millions to become part of a historic movement, the likes of which the world has never seen before. At the center of this movement is a crucial conviction that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Americans want great schools for their children, safe neighborhoods for their families, and good jobs for themselves. These are just and reasonable demands of righteous people and a righteous public. But for too many of our citizens, a different reality exists. Mothers and children trapped in poverty in our inner cities, rusted out factories scattered like tombstones across the landscape of our nation, an education system flush with cash, but which leaves our young and beautiful students deprived of all knowledge. And the crime, and the gangs, and the drugs that have stolen too many lives and robbed our country of so much unrealized potential. This American carnage stops right here and stops right now. We are one nation, and their pain is our pain. Their dreams are our dreams, and their success will be our success. We share one heart, one home, and one glorious destiny. The oath of office I take today is an oath of allegiance to all Americans. For many decades, we've enriched foreign industry at the expense of American industry, subsidized the armies of other countries while allowing for the very sad depletion of our military. We've defended other nations' borders while refusing to defend our own. And spent trillions and trillions of dollars overseas while America's infrastructure has fallen into disrepair and decay. We've made other countries rich while the wealth, strength, and confidence of our country has dissipated over the horizon. One by one, the factories shuttered and left our shores, with not even a thought about the millions and millions of American workers that were left behind. The wealth of our middle class has been ripped from their homes and then redistributed all across the world. But that is the past, and now we are looking only to the future. We assembled here today are issuing a new decree to be heard in every city, in every foreign capital, and in every hall of power. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. From this day forward, it's going to be only America first. America first. Every decision on trade, on taxes, on immigration, on foreign affairs will be made to benefit American workers and American families. We must protect our borders from the ravages of other countries making our products, stealing our companies, and destroying our jobs. Protection will lead to great prosperity and strength. I will fight for you with every breath in my body, and I will never, ever let you down. America will start winning again, winning like never before. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth. And we will bring back our dreams. We will build new roads and highways and bridges and airports and tunnels and railways all across our wonderful nation. We will get our people off of welfare and back to work, rebuilding our country with American hands and American labor. We will follow two simple rules: buy American and hire American. We will seek friendship and goodwill with the nations of the world, but we do so with the understanding that it is the right of all nations to put their own interests first. We do not seek to impose our way of life on anyone, but rather to let it shine as an example. We will shine for everyone to follow. We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. At the bedrock of our politics will be a total allegiance to the United States of America. And through our loyalty to our country, we will rediscover our loyalty to each other. When you open your heart to patriotism, there is no room for prejudice. The Bible tells us how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. We must speak our minds openly, debate our disagreements honestly, but always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable. There should be no fear. We are protected, and we will always be protected. We will be protected by the great men and women of our military and law enforcement. And most importantly, we will be protected by God. Finally, we must think big and dream even bigger. In America, we understand that a nation is only living as long as it is striving. We will no longer accept politicians who are all talk and no action, constantly complaining but never doing anything about it. The time for empty talk is over. Now arrives the hour of action. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it cannot be done. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We stand at the birth of a new millennium, ready to unlock the mysteries of space, to free the earth from the miseries of disease, and to harness the energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag. And whether a child is born in the urban sprawl of Detroit or the windswept plains of Nebraska, they look up at the same night sky, they fill their heart with the same dreams, and they are infused with the breath of life by the same almighty Creator. So to all Americans in every city, near and far, small and large, from mountain to mountain, from ocean to ocean, hear these words: you will never be ignored again. Your voice, your hopes, and your dreams will define our American destiny. And your courage and goodness and love will forever guide us along the way. Together, we will make America strong again. We will make America wealthy again. We will make America proud again. We will make America safe again. And yes, together, we will make America great again. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you. God bless America.
The 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. His inaugural address, relatively short in sort of 15-minute range, touched quite a few bases, talked about a lot of different things, all of which we will analyze once the actual inaugural ceremony is over. But there are still a couple of elements left here. The crowd along the mall responding to President Trump. There will be more readings, and there will be the singing of the national anthem
Rabbi Marvin Heyer
and the benediction. So
Reverend
let's watch
Franklin
that, and then we'll
Graham
talk.
and Bishop Wayne T. Jackson to provide readings and the benediction.
Eternal God, bless President Donald J. Trump and America, our great nation. Guide us to remember the words of the psalmist: who may dwell on your holy mountain, one who does what is right and speaks the truth, who knows that when you eat the labor of your hands, you are praiseworthy, that he who sows in tears shall reap in joy, because the freedoms we enjoy are not granted in perpetuity, but must be reclaimed by each generation. As our ancestors have planted for us, so we must plant for others. While it is not for us to complete the task, neither are we free to desist from them. Dispense justice for the needy and the orphan, for they have no one but their fellow citizens. And because a nation's wealth is measured by her values and not by her vaults, bless all of our allies around the world who share our beliefs. By the rivers of Babylon, we wept as we remembered Zion. If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill. The doer of all these shall never falter. May the days come soon when justice will dwell in the wilderness and righteousness will abide in the fertile fields, and the work of righteousness will be peace, quietness, and confidence forever. Amen.
Mr. President, in the Bible, rain is a sign of God's blessing. And it started to rain, Mr. President, when you came to the platform. And it's my prayer that God will bless you, your family, your administration, and may He bless America. The passage of Scripture comes from 1 Timothy chapter 2. I urge then, first of all, that petitions, prayers, intercession, and thanksgiving be made for all people, for kings, for all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good, and it pleases God, our Savior, who wants all people to be saved and come to a knowledge of the truth. For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all people. Now to the King eternal, immortal, invisible, the only God, be honor and glory forever and ever. In Jesus' name, amen.
We thank you, Father, for letting us share this great moment together. Let us not take for granted the air we breathe or the life you've given us. We were all created by you with one blood, all nations to dwell upon this land together. We're not enemies, but brothers and sisters. We're not adversaries, but we're allies. We're not foes, but we're friends. Let us be healed by the power of your love and united by the bond of your spirit. Today, we pray for our 45th president, the vice president, and their families, and give them the wisdom to guide this great nation, the strength to protect it, and the hands to heal it. We bless President Donald J. Trump. We ask that you give him the wisdom of Solomon, the vision of Joseph, and the meekness of Christ. Solomon, who kept peace among many nations, Joseph, who dreamt better for the people, and Christ, who accepted us all. O Lord, mend our hearts and stitch together the fabric of this great country in the spirit of the legendary gospel songwriter Mahalia Jackson. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe the Lord will see us through. I do believe we are on our way to victory. I do believe we will walk hand in hand. I do believe we shall live in peace. I do believe. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe America we shall overcome. May the Lord bless and keep America, make his face shine upon us, and be gracious unto us, and give us peace. In the mighty name of Jesus, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jackie Ivanko, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band. Please stand for the singing of the national anthem.
Say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. Oh, the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets roared there, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the and the home of the brave.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing while the President and official party depart the platform. You will be released by sections shortly.
Well, there you have it. That is the official ceremony, the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. President Trump now shaking hands with a number of those on the dignitary stand. President Obama now will actually leave town, as Bill Clinton did before him. President Trump will escort President Obama to the departure area behind the Capitol building. He'll leave by helicopter. Bob Dole, former Republican senator, former presidential candidate, lost to Bill Clinton in '96. President Obama, also Elizabeth Dole, former secretary, the cabinet secretary. Bob Dole, veteran of the Second World War. Well, let's talk, Jennifer Carroll, for a moment about your man's speech. President Trump's speech. There were a lot of absolutes in there, promises that he said were going to happen immediately.
Well, he gave no room for error. He says he's going to do everything absolutely, and that's a little bit of a mistake for him because people are going to be expecting full delivery. And particularly the Democrats who are going to be trying to regain power in the next year and a half with the midterm elections, they're going to point to all the things that he did not do or couldn't get done. And although he will have another 2 years to go to finish up his term, that's not going to matter. It's just going to give more fodder for a campaign.
Now, he did use the All-Americans term more than a few times, but did you sense a real reaching out in that speech to those who were upset? It almost seemed at times like he was running a campaign again.
Well, actually, I was surprised that, and he said he wrote the speech himself, that it just captured the same essence of the campaign of reaching into the minority communities and the downtrodden communities and help bring them up, and jobs for the American people and America first. So we didn't hear anything new and different. The one thing that was different in his speech was the invoking of God 3 times. He's never, I haven't heard him mention God inside of a speech like we heard today.
Kind of God Bless America endings.
Correct. But not inside in the body of the speech. And I don't know if that was by design to try to bring about that unity, recognizing that we are Judeo-Christian country and utilizing God's name and invoking in that biblical sense to bring people together and bring their hearts together. So maybe that was by design for him in that unification.
You know, there was something that reminded me of 2009 when Barack Obama got up on stage for his inaugural address and George W. Bush was sitting there just a few meters from him. He ripped into the past record of the U.S. in the previous term and how everything was going to change, and there was a new dawn, a new era. And in some ways, Trump today was saying kind of the same thing about Obama.
Well, you saw President Obama's face. I was like, how dare you denigrate my record like this? I don't think I denigrated the middle class at all. I think everything is much better by all measures. We're better off than we were 8 years ago. So he was a little bit less than President Obama was with President Bush, but he did attack and go after the state of the state where we are today, in his view, as to where we are. So again, for the people listening, he talked about the jobs and the factories closing up and the unfair balance of trade and putting America and Americans first and making sure that anything that we decide to do as far as treaties and decisions as a negotiation is always going to be America first.
All right, Jennifer, don't go away. We'll get back to you in a few minutes. I want to do a circuit here of some of the other of our commentators who've got their thoughts on all this. And let's start with Paul Hunter, because he was closest to the new president in terms of proximity during that speech. And also in some ways because, Paul, you've heard so many of his speeches in the past, especially during the campaign. Your sense of that speech, in terms of what you've heard in the past, how different was it?
Yeah, well, I wrote a few things down during that besides taking notes of what he was saying, and one of them was power to the people, which was not a phrase he ever used, but effectively the theme of almost everything he said during the campaign. I thought a lot of this had strong echoes from the speech we heard at the Republican convention in Cleveland, especially when he was going down the list of gangs and crime and drugs. I think he used the term here, this American carnage stops right now. A vivid phrase that I'd not heard him use before, but certainly the themes we've heard from him throughout this campaign. We were talking throughout the campaign, it's over now. We wondered if there would be a lot of talk about unity. I didn't hear an awful lot of that. It really was about the people. Another phrase that I wrote down, this moment is your moment, it belongs to you. Those are the kind of things that brought from the crowd that was here the biggest cheers. The awkward times, you talk about, the previous administration. He didn't use the word swamp. We've heard him talk about draining the swamp a lot, but he talked a lot about how Washington has been flourishing while the people have not, bringing the cheers from the people, the kind of stuff that would rile up crowds during the campaign. But here he is, effectively surrounded by Washington. With them at his back, he's saying, you guys have all got rich while none of you out here have. And as he put it, that ends now. And again, the roar of the crowd. It was a populist speech, and he was, even though the themes were what we've heard from him, I'll tell you, I thought it was probably more on the populism note, as forceful as I've ever heard him on that here today.
All right. Okay, Paul, thanks for that. Get back to you in a couple of minutes. You may be the only one left up there by the time we next get to you. They're vacating the scene quickly. It rained a little bit during the speech, just a light drizzle, but they were, as we saw, passing out the umbrellas. Well, we've got another guest with us, another Canadian, a prominent Canadian, the Minister of Defence, Harjit Sajjan, who we're on the Canadian Embassy rooftop, and there's a kind of a party going on inside of a lot of Canadian dignitaries and American dignitaries who are dropping by the embassy, partly due to the fact we got the best view in town. Your take on that speech? You had a chance to listen to it. What was in there for you as Minister of Defense? What stuck out for you?
Well, for me, I think one thing that we can say, especially when it comes to, from my personal relationship with the U.S., whether it was from my policing background and the military, that relationship will always remain strong. And this is the first time for President Trump to be able to talk to Americans as a president, and he's been putting out his vision. I mean, just like any other government or prime minister or president would do. And Canada has a very unique relationship with the U.S. in many different fields, whether it's trade or defense, and including policing as well.
Was there anything there that worried you? I mean, he did go back to a couple of themes that he talked about during the campaign when it relates to foreign policy in terms of, especially in terms of military issues, that the U.S. has spent too much money propping up other countries in terms of their commitments overseas, and that it was time to pull back on that. Does that worry you?
No, when it comes to defense relationship with whether it's a bilateral or the coalition work, some of the work that we do, we have certain concerns as well, but we discuss this, and together we deal with those challenges. One of the things is, I think I use the word unique quite often because I've lived that experience where, for example, in Afghanistan, Canada was the only nation that allowed U.S. troops under their command. I mean, I served alongside in the battlefield, and as I used to tell Ash Carter often before, was that when it comes to he's the outgoing, and I said when I became Minister of Defense, I said, you know what, we look at bilateral relationships. This is new to me. I said, for me, it's very simple. I look at our defense relationship as when I was on the battlefield alongside U.S. troops when I served with 10th Mountain Division, and that will remain the same moving forward. I've actually tremendous respect for General Matt Mattis, who's coming in as Secretary of Defense, and it was a little bit more process to go, and I look forward to furthering that defense relationship.
When you've listened to the potential Secretary of Defense, Mattis, is there anything that he's saying that particularly interests you in terms of relationships overseas?
Well, I think what we need to do is look at the challenges, is assess what the reality on the ground, and I've said this before, is making sure we have a very good understanding so when we apply resources, we want to make sure that when we send troops into harm's way, that we're actually going to have that impact. So our intelligence cooperation that we have done in the past and how we'll do it forward is extremely important to get a very good understanding so that we can bring in the right skill set, the uniqueness that Canadian has in terms of our assets, and be able to integrate that well so that we can have the desired impact to be able to look at the mutual interest, which is dealing with some of these significant security challenges that we all face.
You know, some Canadians worry about President Trump being anywhere close to a position of serious power in terms of the use of military power. How do you feel? What do you say to those Canadians who worry about that?
I think Canadians can be rest assured and have full confidence that when Canadians, we as a government or a military, goes on an operation, uses force, that we abide by extremely by our Canadian laws, our international laws, and our obligations that we have. And we take this extremely seriously because we need to be able to set that example. And within those important confines, we can still achieve the mission in an effective way. And thing is, we have proven this in many times on our various operations that we have conducted together.
All right, Minister, thanks for dropping by.
Great, thank you very much.
Once you get back to the party.
Absolutely, looking forward to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, as we continue to watch the goodbyes taking place on Capitol Hill, you see there Joe Biden as he gets ready to leave as well. The Obamas will be leaving by helicopter. As the Bidens have gone, President Trump, Melania Trump, the outgoing president, the former President Barack Obama. Sounds funny to say that, but that is the case now. And there's the helicopter which will take the former president out to Andrews Air Force Base, where he will then get on board an aircraft to take the Obama family, all of them, to Palm Springs in California. And they're heading towards there. Just 8 years ago, we watched a similar scene unfold as the Obamas took the outgoing president, George W. Bush, and Laura Bush to the helicopter. Now, this will hardly be their last flight over Washington and out of Washington, because the Obamas are going to live here. While their daughters finish off their schooling, especially the younger daughter. I think the older daughter's on a gap year between high school and university right now. It's hard to believe that they've developed a relationship, but it's said that Donald Trump and Barack Obama have through this transition period, that it started early with a meeting, and there have been more than a few phone calls since. But here he gets on one of the helicopters that is codenamed Marine One, President's helicopter, to take him on his final trip on it out to Andrews. The new president heads back to the steps. It's actually this side of the Capitol building where they used to do the inaugural speeches and the swearing in. But as the crowds grew over the years, they moved to the other side. I think the first one on the side that we witnessed today was 81 with Ronald Reagan.
That's the west side of the Capitol. We're seeing the east side of the Capitol here.
Mm-hmm.
You have Vice President and his wife going to wave goodbye to the former president now and First Lady.
During his swearing in, Mike Pence, the Vice President, seemed to get quite emotional near the end. You could see he was really feeling the weight of every one of those words.
Yeah, well, he's a very serious guy. And you can see in Donald Trump's face as well. It's a moment now when reality is settling in, that the weight of the world is now on their shoulders. And this helicopter is going to go circle around Georgetown and go down to Potomac, and the former President Obama is going to do one last circle of the White House with that helicopter and head over to Andrews Air Force Base, where he's going to be greeted by staffers and probably some of his former cabinet members to shake their hand and take pictures and see them off on Air Force One. Now, the new president cannot enter the White House until Air Force One actually takes off. He's not really
Is that the protocol?
That's the protocol. The Air Force One really has to take off before he would be the president, because you can't have two presidents. But it's, the ceremony is rather interesting, and the pomp and circumstance is fairly interesting. As a matter of fact, the Marine Corps band, the first time they played was January 20th, when they started having the inauguration here in Washington, D.C. on January 20th. It was surprising to hear Donald Trump's speech being so short. If you'd gotten up and went to the kitchen and got a snack, you may have missed it if you were at home, because typically in all of his speeches it's been about 75 minutes long.
Well, as David Frum was telling us, the former Bush speechwriter yesterday, shorter is better.
It is better, short and sweet.
Yeah.
The shortest speech was given by George Washington in his second inaugural.
Right. And the Gettysburg Address, for all the talk about it, and as amazing as it was about like 2 minute speech.
Yeah. And here you have the helicopter rotors are going. We're going to have liftoff pretty soon. You don't know what the Obamas are probably feeling. It looked like on Michelle's face a relief.
Yeah.
Like, now I can get my life back.
That's what it looked like.
And they're going to be a force, President Obama's going to be a force to be reckoned with living in Washington, D.C.
And he made it kind of clear that he's not going to be shy about speaking out when he thinks, you know, there's kind of there's this background to most presidents that they don't talk after they come out of office. They're not critical. He seemed to suggest he wasn't going to be holding back if he felt there was a need to say something.
Similar to Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, he also opposed President Bush and some of the policies he felt. But President Bush was very statesman about it. He didn't criticize the current president at all. He felt that was warrant of the office. Here goes the helicopter flying overhead. Going to go down to the White House. One last pass, flyby. As it flies over the Canadian Embassy as we speak.
Yeah. So Barack Obama, the first African-American president of the United States, his time, his full 2 terms completed. Departs Capitol Hill, does the final fly past over the White House, and then it's out of town, out to California for a break. All right, let's see how this is played on the other side of the world. Because you heard before the speech, we had a chance to talk to a number of our correspondents, including Susan Ormiston, who's in Moscow for us right now. And Susan, as you said, lots of people are going to be watching this speech in Moscow. You get any sense from what you saw in it in terms of reaction there?
Well, Peter, let me just tell you what's going on here. We're in a warehouse space in central Moscow, and they're playing a cartoon on Donald Trump, Super Trump. It's pretty lively and clever, and it's caught the attention of the people here. This is a gathering of Trump supporters who are here to see the inauguration. We were watching earlier all the proceedings on the big screen here, and they're very cautious here about the Trump administration. As we've said, they're interested in new relations with the U.S., but they don't know whether it's going to pan out. Wouldn't be surprised here at all about the nature of his speech today, which was very America first. We've been told all week they expected that, and they actually respect that, because they say that Putin is very much like that too. President Putin, he puts the United States, he puts Russia first, and they can deal with another president who puts his own country first. As I said, there's a lot of interest here. This gathering was planned for people who've been supporting Trump throughout the campaign, and now they're here to say, okay, Mr. Trump, enough words, now we want to see what your deeds are. The Kremlin has for sure been putting some caution, some distance between itself and Mr. Trump over the last week, not wanting to buy in too quickly, but they are expecting that Trump will make some early signs of interest in Russia. I talked to a pollster tonight who said that support for Trump in Russia had risen from 30% to 50% over the last 2 months even. So rising support. There is opposition here, but it's muted. People worried about the prospect of Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump together carving out deals. That worries them quite a bit, Peter.
All right. Susan, thanks very much. Susan, in Moscow tonight, it's mid-evening in Moscow, but obviously they, like people around the world, were interested in what was said today by the new president of the United States and how that may play into especially that relationship that Donald Trump has made clear he wants to have with Vladimir Putin. He wants to start a new relationship between the United States and Russia. We'll see how that works out. Just so you know, the Trumps now go into a luncheon on Capitol Hill, and then in about 90 minutes' time, the parade starts through Washington, heading back towards the White House. But for now, for the next little while, 90 minutes or so, it's a special luncheon, which the cameras will be let in at one point, but for the toast. But other than that, it's kind of a private lunch with a large crowd inside. Okay, Rosie Barton is with us, has been talking to us throughout this day, even gave us some fashion comments.
well-rounded.
I don't know whether you'll live to regret that or not. But
I
we'll
won't.
see.
That shows range. That shows range.
That does show range. Now show us other range now.
Okay, let me tell you what the Prime Minister is saying in a statement.
Okay.
Our Prime Minister has released a statement, obviously congratulating the new president. But I pulled out a couple of sentences that I think are there for very particular reasons. So let me read them to you. He talks about the enduring partnership that is essential to our shared prosperity and security. But he also says this: we both want to build economies where the middle class and those working hard to join it have a fair shot at success. He talks again about national security, saying that there is unparalleled cooperation between the two nations on that, and that we have always worked side by side to protect our citizens and ensure our shared border is secure. So a couple of messages, I think, from our government there as they begin this new relationship with the administration. One, our economies work closely together, remember that. And two, our border is important in terms of security as well. But if the Prime Minister was watching that speech, and I would imagine he was, and certainly we know people across Canada were, including people on Bay Street today, watching to see what would happen and how that might affect the markets, they might want to pay attention to a couple of lines. One that Donald Trump made, saying that they would seek friendship with the world, but it is the right of all nations to improve their interests first. That, to me, is really the key to how he is going to approach all his business, and I think there is a certain amount of awareness of that within the Canadian government. This is about America first. He said that very clearly. So if Canada wants to make a difference, wants Trump to pay attention to them, we are also going to have to make the case about why we matter to them, and that may be how the approach has to change pretty drastically right away.
Okay, Rosie, thank you. And you're right, because we keep hearing it from whichever ministers we talk to, and you heard Chrystia Freeland say it earlier, that they really do have to keep making this case on some of the basics about the relationship and how close the relationship is and how much each country depends on the other, that a new team, as often happens in this Canada-U.S. relationship, when a new team comes into power in Washington, it's sort of starting back from square one to explain everything in terms of that relationship. Rosie's got her show here, Power and Politics, here in Washington, so it'll be on later on this afternoon. You won't want to miss that. Let's go back down to sort of ground zero, the street level, and get Lindsay Duncombe's take, having the opportunity to talk to a lot of people today on ground.
It was really interesting, Peter, to watch the speech with people here in the crowd and to watch the lead up to the speech. It was interesting to contrast the efforts at unity being made up front by the president, the new president, and the outgoing president working together, Hillary Clinton on the stage, to the tone down here, where we are is a ticketed area. So everyone here, largely Trump supporters. And when Hillary Clinton appeared on the screen, there were boos. When Chuck Schumer gave his speech, there certainly were more boos and people trying to shout over him. No one yelled "lock her up," but there was still very much a campaign-style sense that was true in the criticism, but also true with how they treated Donald Trump, shouting "USA, USA," and "Trump, Trump, Trump." It reminded me very much, Peter, of all of the rallies that we went to throughout the campaign, and perhaps a sense that animosity, that division, can't be healed by any of the words that we heard today.
All right. Lindsay, thank you. Great work down there today, along with Adrian Arsenault as well, working the crowds and getting their sense. Lindsay Duncombe for us. I want to show you quickly where that route is that will head towards the White House, the parade route that takes place. Doesn't start for about 90 minutes time, but if we can pop up the map here to give. Oh, it sounded okay. Sorry. Here's a good look at it. Right here. Steps of the Capitol building and proceeds along Pennsylvania Avenue to the White House. About 8,000 people will participate in this year's event, including ceremonial military regiments, citizens groups, marching bands, and floats. The majority of the route is free and open to the public. It will pass the Canadian Embassy, always a hot ticket because it's the only foreign embassy on the parade route. Then a place the new president knows well, the Trump International Hotel. This year's parade will be shorter than in previous years, about 1 hour and a half. The incoming administration says Donald Trump wants to get down to work. ASAP. All right. That gives you a sense of what happens throughout the afternoon. Jennifer Carroll, closing thoughts on what we witness here.
We witness a peaceful transition of power. Now it's time for Donald Trump to get to work. And that's the bottom line. How much is he going to be able to accomplish in a short period of time? And the weight is going to be all on his shoulders because he made the promises.
Still have the faith?
I have the faith. All we need is the time.
Yeah, that's going to be a challenge.
It is going to be a challenge. And he needs the American people to get behind him as well.
All right. Jennifer, thanks so much for being with us.
It's been a joy.
So as we close out, a reminder that throughout this afternoon on CBC News Network, lots of coverage of the continuing day, Inauguration Day here for the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Parade coming up in about 90 minutes, but lots of coverage throughout the day, and of course, supper hour newscasts and the National tonight. I'm Peter Mansbridge. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.
Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute. So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.